I knew this area when it was a hospital, which, well, hospital really sort of meant sort of care for the elderly who are unable to look after themselves. So I suppose they probably the patients suffer from dementia, many of them. So it was laid out in wards, and the healthcare system was being changed. So we were told the hospital was going to close and the site would become vacant. And the council was suggesting it could become a new park. Seemed like a good idea. It said the area a bit short on parks, as I think we were looking earlier, looking at the map and how little green space was left when all the streets were built. And behind where I'm standing was the remains of the workhouse that was built around 1840, where people were locked up if they were too poor to look after themselves. They were locked up, and that's where they were, in the workhouse there. But what we see is made in new brick. You can see several projections coming out towards us from an older brick block. So the old brick block is the workhouse, and the projections represent alterations to make social housing. But in the big gap behind was what they called the Great Hall of the hospital, and there was a group called the Friends of Langthorne Hospital, and they used to raise money for the hospital, as Friends of Whipps Cross Hospital still do. But this Friends of Langthorne Hospital were like a little social group of their own, all quite elderly themselves, and they used to meet every week. And I think it sort of became their social life, was being Friends of Langthorne Hospital. And they'd have jumble sales and raise money in that sort of way, and ask the hospital administrators what they want the money spent on. And when I was given a tour of the hospital site, they were pointing out things that the hospital said they wanted and had been bought for them by the Friends of Langthorne Hospital, and now lying sort of uncared for. I think it was a greenhouse and various other things. So it seemed a bit sad. And with the development being planned, the Friends were told that they would have to leave because they had a bit of space in the old bit of the hospital. They were being told they'd have to leave, which upset them. And the Great Hall would be pulled down, and they were very upset about that. They knew it was a place where they'd held dances, and I think it might still have been holding tea dances in this Great Hall. So Waltham Forest Civic Society, which I was secretary, I think, at the time, was asked to help in the campaign to save this Great Hall, which we tried to do, unsuccessfully, as you can see behind us. But it was a really big hall, and it was certainly on the outside. It was quite an impressive design, sort of classical, noble classical design. And halls are rare, and I could never understand why the authorities are so dead keen on demolishing this Great Hall rather than keeping it. But they were absolutely certain. It's just become a car park, which is not my favourite cause for demolishing old buildings, particularly ones that mean something to the local people and people who've been raising money for the hospital. So it was a big shame. No explanation ever given. The development took place on one of the anniversaries of William Morris. This is about 10 years ago, or maybe a bit more, so you have to work out which anniversary it was, but it seemed particularly hypocritical to celebrate William Morris in the year, and what they did was exactly the sort of thing he hated doing, which they've sort of messed about with this thing in a sort of half like the original style of the workhouse, but only half, so they haven't tried completely. They've tried to modernise it, but they haven't done it in a decent modern style. It's sort of like a fudge, really, of neither old nor modern. I suppose it's not bad, but it's not actually terribly wonderful either. And William Morris really hated that sort of thing, mainly in relation to churches, but really didn't like that sort of quite wholesale alteration of old buildings in what they thought was an improved version of the style